The street had gone too quiet. Dust hung in the air, unmoving, like even the wind had stepped back to watch what would happen next. 8 men stood frozen outside the Bannock Mercantile. 2 were clutching their hands, blood dripping between their fingers. 1 was on his knees, staring at the ground like it might open and swallow him. And in the middle of it all, a woman in a simple travel dress held a revolver with both hands, steady, unshaking. The sheriff raised his own gun. Amos Cutter did not rush. He did not shout. He just watched her, because something about the way she stood there did not match the rest of the scene. "Put it down," he said. His voice carried across the empty street, slow and controlled, nice and easy. The woman did not move, not a twitch, not even a blink. A breeze brushed her shawl, but her arms stayed locked, her aim fixed. "Ma'am," Amos added, a little firmer now, "this part's over." Still nothing. A man groaned behind her. One of the robbers shifted, trying to crawl. Her gun tilted half an inch. He froze again. That was when Amos noticed it. She wasn't aiming wild. She was tracking movement, like she had done it before, more than once. "Who taught you to shoot like that?" Amos asked. He did not mean to ask it. It just came out. Because no one picked up a revolver like that by accident. No one held it that steady with 3 wounded men at their feet. The woman finally spoke. Her voice came calm, too calm for what had just happened. "I'll lower it," she said, "when I know you're here to listen, not decide." The words landed heavier than the gun between them. Amos tightened his jaw. Behind him, boots creaked. People had started gathering at the edge of the street. No one stepped closer. No one wanted to breathe too loud, because something else was happening here. Something that wasn't just about a failed robbery. Amos kept his gun raised, but not as high as before. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ruth Alden." She shifted her weight slightly, never breaking aim. "I arrived 4 days ago." Amos nodded once. He knew the name. Mail-order bride. Rancher named Everett Doss. Quiet man. Kept to himself. Didn't cause trouble. And yet here she stood. 3 men down. Gun steady. Eyes locked. The story didn't fit. And Amos had learned, years ago, that when things didn't fit, they usually broke something later. "You disarmed one of them from 30 feet, he said. "You held the others in place." His eyes narrowed slightly. "That ain't luck." Ruth's fingers adjusted on the grip. Small. Precise. "You're right," she said. Another man groaned. A drop of blood hit the dirt. Somewhere far off, a horse snorted. Everything else stayed still. Amos took 1 slow step forward. His boots pressed into the dust with a soft crunch. "You mind telling me where that kind of aim comes from?" he asked. Ruth did not answer. Not right away. She looked past him for a second. At the crowd. At the distance. At the space between people who didn't want to get involved. Then she looked back at him. "You ever lose someone?" she said quietly, because someone else decided they already knew the truth. The question hit harder than the gunfire had. Amos didn't move, didn't speak, because for a moment, he saw a grave, fresh dirt, a wooden marker. A name he had not said out loud in years. Silas Reed. He pushed the memory down. Hard. "This ain't about me," Amos said, but his voice had changed. Just enough. Ruth noticed. Of course she did. She had been noticing everything since this started. "That's where you're wrong," she said. The wind shifted again. Her shawl brushed her arm. Her gun stayed perfectly still. "Because the way you're looking at me right now," she continued, "that's not about what I did today." Amos felt it then. That uncomfortable tightening in his chest. The one he got when something he believed in started to slip. "You saved that store," he said. His voice was quieter now. "But I've seen men do the same thing before walking into worse." Ruth's lips pressed together. Not in anger, not in fear. Something else. something older. "You think I'm one of them?" she said. Amos didn't answer, because he did. Or at least, part of him did. The part that had learned the hard way. The part that had stood beside a coffin and promised never to be fooled again. Ruth watched him, waited. Then finally, slowly, she lowered her revolver. Not all the way. Just enough. A test. Amos saw it, understood it, and after a long second, he lowered his too. The tension didn't break. It shifted. Like a rope pulled tight between two people instead of a gunfight ready to explode. Ruth exhaled. Barely. Then she spoke again. "My father taught me," she said. Amos said nothing. "He said if you live far enough from help, you become it." Her eyes dropped for a moment. Just a moment. That lesson cost him more than he planned. The street felt colder suddenly, even under the sun. Amos studied her face. Not her gun. Not her stance. Her face. And for the first time since he arrived, he saw something there that didn't belong to a threat. It belonged to a memory. A heavy one. He holstered his weapon. Slow. Deliberate. "I'm listening," he said. Ruth looked at him again. This time, she believed it. But she didn't speak right away. Because whatever she was about to say next was not something she gave easily. And somewhere behind her, one of the wounded men tried to move again. Her head turned, just slightly. Her hand tightened on the grip, and Amos realized something in that moment. This wasn't over. Not the robbery, not the questions, and definitely not the story she was carrying. Because whatever had taught her to stand like this was still standing with her now, waiting to be told. Ruth did not start with the night. She started with the land. Flat ground stretching under a wide sky. Water cutting through it like a promise that never ran dry. "My father chose it because of the creek," she said. Her voice stayed steady, but her fingers tightened slightly on the revolver. "Everything out there lives or dies by water." Amos nodded once. He knew that truth better than most. Ruth took a small breath. Other men wanted that water too. The wind picked up a little, dragging dust across the street. Someone in the crowd shifted. No one stepped forward. "My father turned them down," she continued. Every offer. Amos could already see where this was going. Men didn't like hearing no when land and water were involved. "What happened?" he asked. Ruth's eyes dropped for a second. Not in weakness. In memory. They came at night. The words landed simple. Heavy. No warning. A board creaked somewhere behind her. One of the wounded robbers let out a low sound. No one looked at him. "They thought it would scare us," she said. 3 riders. Guns out. Voices loud. Her grip shifted again. A small movement. Controlled. But my father didn't scare easy. Amos could picture it now. A lantern swinging in the dark. Boots hitting dirt. Hands reaching for guns. "He woke us up," Ruth said. "Told us to stand where we could see the door." Her voice slowed slightly, like she was stepping carefully through something sharp. "He handed me the revolver." Amos felt that. Not the words. The moment behind them. A father making a choice he couldn't take back. He said, "If they come through that door, you don't wait." Ruth's jaw tightened. The memory sat heavy in her chest. "They didn't come through the door," she said. "They started shooting from outside." The street in Bannock felt smaller suddenly, like the past had crowded into it. "Glass broke," she continued. Wood split. Her eyes flicked toward the ground. I fired back. Amos didn't interrupt, didn't move. "She hit one," he said quietly. Ruth gave a small nod. Then another. A man in the crowd whispered something under his breath. Someone told him to be quiet. Ruth kept going. They weren't expecting resistance. Her voice carried something sharp now. Not anger, something colder. They thought it would be easy. Amos had seen that mistake before, more times than he could count. "They started pulling back," she said. One of them fired wide. Her breathing slowed, measured. Another didn't. She stopped. The silence stretched, long enough that even the wind seemed to hold still. Amos felt it before she said it. The shift. The part that mattered. My father stepped in front of me. The words came softer, but they hit harder than anything before them. Amos looked down for a second. Just a second. Then back up. He didn't hesitate, Ruth added. He didn't think. Her fingers tightened again. He just moved. A drop of blood from one of the robbers hit the dirt behind her. Neither of them looked. Shot caught him here, she said, touching just below her collarbone. Her hand stayed there for a moment, then dropped. I fired again, she continued. Faster than I ever had. Her eyes lifted back to Amos. I hit both of them. There was no pride in it. No relief. Just fact. They ran. Amos swallowed once. Slow. And your father? He asked. Ruth didn't answer right away, because she didn't need to. The answer was already there, in the way she stood, in the way she held that gun. He didn't get back up, she said. Simple. Final. The crowd shifted again, quieter now. Even the ones who came just to watch were listening. Because this wasn't just a story anymore. It was something heavier, something that stayed with a person. They left after that, Ruth said. Didn't come back. Her voice flattened slightly. The land stayed ours. Amos let out a slow breath. That was the end of it? He asked. Ruth looked at him, a small shake of her head. No, of course it wasn't. Things like that never ended clean. They sent a letter, she said. Condolence. Amos blinked once. Didn't expect that. From the man who wanted the land, she added. Her mouth tightened. Signed neat, words clean. She looked away for a second. Didn't change anything. Amos felt something twist in his chest. That kind of thing stayed with you, long after the dirt settled. I stayed 3 more years, Ruth said. Ran the place with my brothers. Her voice steadied again. But every time I picked up a gun, she didn't finish. She didn't need to. Amos understood. Too well. You think I wanted this? She said, lifting the revolver slightly. Not aiming, just holding it between them. You think I carry this because I like what it makes me? Her eyes locked onto his. Sharp, clear. I carry it because the one time it mattered most. Her throat tightened. Just for a second. It wasn't enough. The words stayed between them. Heavy. Real. Amos didn't look away this time, because now he saw it. Not a threat. Not a mystery. A weight. One she had been carrying a long time. He took a slow breath. Then spoke. I buried a man 3 years ago, he said. Ruth's expression didn't change, but she listened. Trusted someone I shouldn't have, he continued. Didn't ask enough questions. His jaw tightened slightly. Cost him his life. Ruth's grip loosened just a little. Not much. Just enough. So now you ask too many, she said. Amos gave a small nod. So now you expect too much, he added. The two of them stood there. Same street. Same moment. Different pasts. Same kind of weight. You see danger where it isn't, Ruth said. You see it where it is, Amos replied. Another pause. Not tense this time. Something else. Something settling. Ruth lowered her revolver fully. This time she didn't stop halfway. The barrel pointed toward the ground. Amos watched her, then nodded once. Fair enough, he said quietly. Behind them, one of the robbers tried to push himself up again. Amos turned his head, just slightly. Don't, he said. The man froze. Ruth looked back at the sheriff. So what now? She asked. Amos glanced at the men on the ground, then back at her. Now, he said, we figure out why 3 men thought they could walk into this town in daylight and get away with it. Ruth's eyes narrowed slightly. because something about that didn't sit right. Not anymore. Not after everything she had just told him, and not after the way those men had moved, like they expected something, like they weren't just guessing. Her grip tightened again. Just a little. "Sheriff," she said. Amos looked at her. "What is it?" Ruth's gaze shifted toward the mercantile, toward the door, toward the broken glass. "They weren't just robbing a store," she said quietly. Amos felt it then. That same instinct that had kept him alive all these years. The one that told him when something wasn't finished. "What do you mean?" he asked. Ruth didn't answer right away, because she was listening to something the others hadn't noticed yet. A faint sound from inside the store. Wood moving. Slow. Careful. Like someone trying not to be heard. Ruth's hand lifted again. Not fast. Not wild. Controlled. And Amos turned, just as the back door of the mercantile creaked open. And someone stepped out with a rifle already raised. The rifle came up fast. Not wild. Not shaking. The man stepping out of the mercantile's back door moved like he knew exactly where to point it. Straight at Ruth. Amos didn't think. His hand dropped to his holster. But he was a fraction too slow. Ruth wasn't. Her revolver snapped up in one clean motion. No wasted movement. No hesitation. A single shot cracked through the street. Sharp. Controlled. The rifle spun out of the man's hands and hit the dirt with a heavy thud. He staggered back against the doorframe, clutching his wrist. Didn't fall. But he didn't reach for the gun again. Dust settled slowly between them. The sound rolled away into the hills. And just like that, everyone understood. There hadn't been 3 men. There had been 4. Amos stepped forward now. Fast. Boots hitting hard against the ground. He kicked the rifle away and grabbed the man by the collar, slamming him against the wood. "Don't move," he said. The man didn't argue, didn't fight. He just breathed hard, teeth clenched, eyes flicking once toward the other robbers. Ruth saw that look, that quick glance, that silent question, and something inside her tightened, because she had seen that before. Men checking for someone else, someone in charge. "Sheriff," she said. Amos didn't look back. "What?" "He wasn't running," she said. Amos paused, just for a second, then slowly turned his head. The man he held didn't meet his eyes, looked past him, toward the street, toward the others. Amos felt it then, that shift again. Same one as before, like the ground wasn't done moving yet. "Talk," Amos said, tightening his grip. The man stayed quiet. Jaw locked. Ruth stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough. "You weren't here for the store," she said. The man's eyes flicked to her. Quick. Then away. That was enough. Ruth exhaled slowly. "They told you something was inside," she continued. "Something worth more than money." The man swallowed. His shoulders tensed. Amos saw it. "Inside what?" he demanded. Still nothing. But now the silence was different. Not empty. Holding something back. Amos shoved him harder against the wall. Wood creaked. "You walked in here in daylight," Amos said. "4 of you." He leaned closer. "That ain't desperation." The man's breathing picked up. Faster now. Sweat ran down his temple. Ruth turned toward the mercantile. Broken glass crunched under her boots as she stepped closer to the door. Her eyes scanned the inside. Shelves. Barrels. Crates. Nothing looked out of place. And yet, she could feel it. That same quiet tension she had felt on the homestead years ago, right before the first shot. Something wrong beneath what people could see. "Sheriff," she called. Amos dragged the man forward. "What is it?" Ruth pointed inside. "Check the floor." Amos frowned. "The floor?" Ruth nodded. "Back corner." She didn't explain. Didn't need to. Amos had learned enough already. He pushed the man toward one of his deputies who had just arrived and stepped inside. The mercantile smelled like dust and spilled grain. A lantern swung slightly from the ceiling. Slow, back and forth. Amos moved toward the rear, boots thudding softly against the wood. Then he heard it, a hollow sound. Different from the rest. He stopped, looked down. One plank sat just a hair off, barely noticeable, unless you were looking for it. He crouched, pressed it. Loose. Amos slid his fingers under the edge and pulled. The board lifted, and beneath it, cloth, wrapped tight, stacked, more than one bundle. Amos pulled one free, untied it. Coins. Not a handful. A fortune. Gold catching the dim light. His jaw tightened. This wasn't a random robbery. This was a target. He stood slowly, looked back toward the door, toward Ruth. She was already watching him. She didn't smile, didn't react, just waited. Because she already knew. Amos stepped back outside, held up the bundle. The crowd gasped. A low ripple of voices spread through them. "Where'd that come from?" someone whispered. The merchant pushed through the crowd, face pale. "That ain't mine," he said quickly. "Never seen that before in my life." Amos believed him, because this kind of thing didn't sit out in the open. It got placed, hidden, used later. Amos turned back to the man he had grabbed. His grip tightened again. "Who told you about it?" he asked. The man shook his head. "Too fast, too sharp. Lie." Ruth stepped closer again. Slow, measured. "Garrett Voss," she said. The name landed like a stone in still water. The man froze, just for a second, then looked down. Amos caught it, every bit of it. "Say it," Amos demanded. The man's jaw worked. His eyes darted once more. Then finally, "He said it was already there," he muttered. "Hidden." Amos felt something cold settle in his chest. Voss. The same name. The same kind of move. Ruth didn't move. Didn't react. But her hand tightened around the revolver again. Not raised. Just held. Because now it wasn't just a memory. It had followed her. All the way here. Amos looked at her. Really looked this time. And saw it clear. This wasn't coincidence. This was unfinished business. "Looks like your past just rode into my town," he said quietly. Ruth met his gaze. Steady. Unshaking. "No," she replied. Her voice came low. "Certain. It's been here longer than I have." The wind picked up again. Stronger now. Dust swept across the street in a long wave, the kind that blurred everything for a moment. And when it cleared, Amos already knew. This wasn't about a robbery anymore. And it wasn't going to end in one place. Because if Garrett Voss had reached this far, then he wasn't finished either. And somewhere out there, he was already making his next move. The dust had not settled yet. It kept moving across Bannock Street in slow waves, like the ground itself was uneasy. Amos stood still for a moment. Then he turned. "Get them locked up," he said to his deputies. His voice carried sharp now. No hesitation left in it. The wounded men were dragged away. The fourth one too. But his eyes stayed on Ruth as they pulled him past her. Not angry, not afraid, waiting. Like he knew something she didn't. Or something she did. Ruth watched him go. Her grip on the revolver stayed firm. Not raised, not relaxed. Somewhere in between. Amos stepped closer to her. "You ever see Voss since that night?" he asked. Ruth shook her head. No. Her eyes stayed on the road leading out of town. He didn't need to come himself. Amos understood that. Men like Voss didn't dirty their boots unless they had to. "They used your story," Amos said. Ruth didn't answer, because that part didn't surprise her. "They knew where to look," he added. Ruth finally looked at him. Then someone told them. Simple, direct. The kind of truth that didn't need decoration. Amos nodded slowly. Or someone watched, he said. The two of them stood there, thinking the same thing. Someone had been tracking her. Not just the land. Her. Amos turned toward the mercantile again, toward the hidden gold. This ain't just about you, he said. Ruth stepped closer, close enough that her voice stayed between them. It never was. The merchant hovered nearby, nervous, hands shaking. I swear I didn't know about that, he said. Amos believed him. Too clean, too surprised. Someone used your store, Amos said. The merchant swallowed hard. For what? Amos looked down at the gold, then back at Ruth. For moving money without questions, Ruth said. Her voice stayed low, controlled. Hide it, pick it up later, no trail. Amos nodded. It fit. Too well. He looked back at the road again. The long stretch leading out toward the hills. Empty now. But not for long. He'll send more, Amos said. Ruth didn't disagree. Because men like Voss didn't stop when something failed. They adjusted. They tried again. Only smarter. Only harder. A horse approached from the distance. Slow. Measured. Dust rising behind it. Ruth's eyes narrowed. Amos's hand drifted toward his holster. Not rushed. Not nervous. Ready. The rider came closer. Closer. Then slowed near the edge of town. Didn't ride in. Didn't call out. Just sat there. Watching. Ruth felt it in her chest. That same pressure. The one that came before something broke. Amos stepped forward a few paces. State your business, he called out. The rider didn't move. Didn't answer. Just reached into his coat. Slow. Careful. Amos's hand tightened on his gun. Ruth raised hers halfway. Not aiming yet. The rider pulled out a folded paper, held it up, then tossed it into the dirt between them. Turned his horse, and rode away. No hurry, no fear. Like his job was already done. Amos walked forward, picked up the paper, unfolded it. His jaw tightened. Ruth stepped beside him. What is it? Amos handed it to her. She read it once, then again. Her fingers pressed into the edges of the paper. A name signed at the bottom. Garrett Voss. The message was short, clear. You should have sold when I asked. The wind lifted the edge of the paper. Ruth held it steady. Her breathing slowed, not shaking. Not breaking. Something else. Something harder. Amos watched her, waiting, because this was the moment. The one that decided what came next. Ruth folded the paper once. Carefully, then handed it back. He wants the land again, Amos said. Ruth nodded. He always did. Amos glanced at the road one more time, then back at her. You planning to run? He asked. Ruth didn't even pause. No. The word came simple, final. Amos gave a small nod. He expected that. He looked toward the jail, then toward the hills. Then back at her. Then we do this right, he said. Ruth tilted her head slightly. Meaning? Amos took a breath. Slow, measured. We don't wait for him to make the next move. The wind pushed dust across their boots. The town stayed quiet, listening. Ruth's hand settled fully at her side, gun still in it, but no longer between them. Then we make it first, she said. Amos met her eyes. For the first time since all this started, there was no doubt in his, just decision. Behind them, the sun dipped lower. Long shadows stretched across Bannock. And out beyond those shadows, somewhere past the hills, a man who had already taken something once was preparing to take it again. Ruth turned toward the road, toward that distance. Her fingers tightened once more around the revolver her father had placed in her hands years ago. Not as a question, not as a memory, as a choice. And this time, she was not standing alone.